this new thing. It's a new thing on Zoom, where they announce that recording is in progress. All right, so welcome everybody. This is the first career panel discussion that we have in the summer session of Gurukool 2021. We are joined by three panelists today, right? So we have Titash, who is a postdoctoral scientist at AstraZeneca. She's based in UK currently. We have Janani, she's a senior scientist at Molecular Templates, and we have Abhijit, who's a lead scientist at Deciduous Therapeutics. So before we go ahead with the questions, I'll have you guys introduce yourselves briefly, just where you are and very briefly about your background. So we can start with Abhijit. You're first on my screen.
Hi. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. I really like the Gurukool platform, and I really got a lot of good friends as well as a lot of good information from it. So I'm really happy to give it back to the people. So to give you just briefly my background, I did my PhD from in New York, and then I moved to West Coast to do a postdoc in aging research in Buck Institute for Aging Research. And then last year I got into this Deciduous Therapeutics, which actually works on the senescence. So that's briefly my background, and we can go ahead from there. So next one, Janani.
Okay, first of all, thanks Sohini for inviting me, and I'm a newbie to this transition. I transitioned 2 months back to a clinical biopharma. So my background is basically cell biology and signaling pathways. So I did my PhD from Australia and moved to the US, where I did 2 years of postdoc in epigenetics, and then moved to MD Anderson for the last 5 years I was there. Got promoted as a research scientist, and then one fine day I decided I just want to see my work getting progress to patients and therapeutics. So I joined Gurukool, and I networked with a lot of people, which I'll be talking about. And Gurukool sort of helped me leverage my skills and my ability to network. And today I am on the other side of the panel, trying to share my experience with all of you. And I'm based out at Austin, Texas.
Thanks, Janani. Titash, you want to go next?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I am Titash. I am an RNA biologist by training. I did my PhD from IISc India on yeast splicing. And towards the end of my PhD, I knew that I want to work in industry. So I started following STEMPeers during that time, and by passively following all the posts and everything, it helped me to choose my postdoc in France on RNA biology and melanoma resistance. And following 2 years of postdoc in Paris, I joined Gurukool towards last year, and I was fortunate with the help of, everything going on, and by following the lecture series by Tracy and lots of networking all over the world, I was able to get my first foot in the door, I would say. I'm working as a postdoctoral scientist in AstraZeneca. So I'm presently based in Cambridge, and I'm very happy to be here, and I look forward to interact with many of you and learn many more things. Thank you.
Thank you for those introductions. We actually have quite a few RNA biologists, at least in this, this session of Gurukool. So I'm pretty sure they will be interested in learning more about that. But I think all of you kind of touched on that. I think this may be a question. I mean, we're all here because we do want to transition to industry, right? But at what point did you think that you wanted to do that, and why? And also, being international students, there are a lot of different things, right? Visa being one of the major issues. But in spite of that, can you tell us what your timeline looked like, and what were some things that worked very well for you, but some things that were the biggest obstacle, I can't pronounce today, in your transition? So we'll start with Janani, because from reading your posts, I know that how long you've been at this. So I'll let you go first.
Okay. So my journey was on and off, to be honest. So when I started first, it was like a closed door. I had no idea where to go to. I had no directions. I was clueless. When I joined Gurukool, that's when I sort of realized that CV and resumes were two different things. Like so far, I had like zero knowledge on, okay, resume is different and CV is different. I had no knowledge about that. And then I started working on it. And then I was like, okay, I was in a J visa, and people here who are on J visa can definitely tell what a struggle that is. So when I was in J visa, I was like, you know what? People are not going to hire me because I'm on a visa, and visa was a constraint. And then Tracy came as this job angel to me. Like I started going through her webinars and seminars and interacting with Raghu and Deepa and Ananda. These people sort of like were the forces, to be honest, behind me, trying to push me forward, trying to tell me like, LinkedIn is a place to go. And again, I kept going to LinkedIn and I didn't know what to do. And then I sort of like realized that, you need to make some noise to show your presence, because no one's going to come and knock your door. So I started revamping my LinkedIn profile. And it took me like about 6 to 8 months to actually get this process going. So I started revamping my LinkedIn profile, and I started getting hits from people from unknown corners. Like I started tagging companies that I was looking for jobs, but eventually I didn't end up in any of those. But you know what, like really big companies like Pfizer or Genentech, which is in my field, and you start tagging those posts because they keep producing zillion things. And it's not like you keep going to their profile and there is Biospace and Fierce Biotech who does the job for you. All you do is cut, copy, paste. As long as you know Control C, Control V, you're in the game. And you regularly start posting on LinkedIn, and then it started attracting people to my profile. And then I started getting recruiters call. And one of the first call I ever had was an eye-opening call, because I spoke to this person, say about 2 years back, and I had no idea that this person has actually moved from company A to company B. When he moved to company B, he was setting up his laboratory, and he thought of me and he gave me a call one fine day, and he was like, "Are you interested with this job?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And that was like my first interview. I didn't know what I said. I didn't know what I did. But he was an amazing mentor, to be honest. Like he was my interviewer, but he gave me a lot of tips on how to mitigate the job interview. So I kind of took those cues, and also the interview preps like Tracy's webinars. I followed it to the T. And then everything worked out, and I had 4 offers in hand. And then I was able to pick and choose. And one of the greatest thing I would say is networking, and visa is not a constraint, to be honest. Like I'm on an O visa, Abhijit is on an O visa. We're all on visas. Yes, visa is a constraint, but networking definitely helps you mitigate that issue. As long as your CV, or okay, let me put it this way, as long as your resume is with the hiring manager, your visa is not a constraint, and depends on how you prove yourself, how you present yourself. Being on the other side of panel, and now that we are recruiting and I am sitting on interview panels, I can say one of the key things that we look for is the personality. It's 60% of how you present yourself and how is your personality and how you would be a team fit, because anybody and everybody can learn science once you're in an industry. You don't need stelling papers, or you don't need like to be the top. You don't need to have an HSL or science paper to crack an interview. As long as you have your personality, as long as you network, as long as you know what the company is doing, and you put that into your words, and you put that into like, tell me yourself. Like the first ball game is 20 seconds of your interview. Tell me about yourself. You crack that, you're in the game. So I have spoken to a couple of them in Gurukool, and I keep telling them the same thing. You tell me about yourself. You try and tailor it around the JD, which is the job description. You try and tailor it around it. One of the classic examples, which Roshni, who is also a Gurukool mentee, she used to tell me, like, if they ask you how to cut a carrot, just say, Janani, like you can make it julienne, you can chop it, you can do this, you can do that with a carrot. Don't say that you're putting it in a salad, because people don't want to see what you know with the salad, but they want to know how you cut a carrot. So take the job description, and that kind of changed my ball game, honestly. Like before, tell me about yourself was about the story from the time I was born to what I was now. People were not interested at all. They want like very short answers, very crisp answers. Stick to your JD, and that's definitely a ball game. And also networking in LinkedIn. Especially for people who don't have a PhD from here, it's very difficult to find a network. But give it a try. Just connect with people on LinkedIn. Just tell them that you're in a crossroads looking for. So one of the magic words that I used was, I'm at the crossroads, trying to figure out a career path, either in an industry or an academic. Could you spare 5 minutes of your time to talk to me about your career path? And many of them agreed. Um, the other target that I did was also contacting people who are at the hiring manager level, so who are able to take decisions. So I got better perspectives from them, and I also used to connect with senior scientists and scientists in the company. So I got their perspective, and when I was called for an interview, I had like both the sides, so I could tailor my answers based on those. Okay, I've been talking a lot, so I think I'll pass it on to Abhijit to, enlighten some more information about this.
Sure, but I will come back to a lot of points you talked about, Janani, because you touched
Sure.
on a lot of important points. So, but we'll come back once we hear Abhijit's and Titash's story. Yeah, Abhijit.
Right. So for me, I did my PhD from Einstein, as I said. So that was like a totally in a basic research. But then I shifted to Bay Area, and I think that was an eye opener for me, because Bay Area is like a amalgamation of totally like different translational research and the companies, and also like the academia, everything. So the main thing that I started doing after I joined my postdoc is start networking. That was, I think, Janani has stressed enough on those things, that networking is the key. So in her case, she started with the LinkedIn. In my case, there like there are like so many different institutes in Bay Area. So we had like a postdoc association for each. So I used to like network with those guys, like Bay Area postdoc association. I got part of it, and then I started interacting with a lot of people like around Bay Area. It just because at that time it wasn't really like, okay, I want to target some industry, specific industry or something. It was mostly into networking. But then after I like realized, and you do speak to people, then you understand, okay, what is kind of role they do, what kind of like a science. So after I speak to like multiple people about like technical, then sales, then um, the instrumentation and other like different, all the different parts of the industry, I realized that, okay, what I like most is doing bench work. So then I focus, okay, now I'm going to go on that side. And then I started focusing on like talking to more people about that. And then the main thing was to, when you apply, I think Janani has actually like gone through most of the points that I was going to say. Just the main thing is that, again, when you network, it's always help you if your CV is sent by someone in the company, or like pushed by one of your network, than by the routine, like LinkedIn request. I mean, it goes via LinkedIn request too. But if somebody, like, if let's say you have someone and they sent your resume, that actually make a lot of impact. And actually that happened with me. So one of my colleague and a friend who, like, she talked to me like, okay, we have this opening, and I'm like, okay, you can just send my resume. And then they just got my resume, and then I had an interview, and within a week I had already had a job. So it really like works out. But then other places, when you just go through normal route, it works, you can at least get an interview and other things. But I would say that most of the time it always helps to have a insider person who can push your resume to the next level. um, and then with respect to the international scholar now, so most of the people now, after I got my job, so it was, as Janani said, once the hiring manager wants it, even the startup, like our startup is only a 2-year old, but still they can sponsor you a visa. Like I'm on right now on O1 visa, and after I got my visa, I actually helped or guided a lot of people on O1, and I've seen, like, most of the people who are in that position actually go through that. So visa is not an issue at all, in my opinion. If you can show your worth to the company and show that how good fit you are, for company, $2,000-3,000 doesn't really make a lot of difference. They just want good people to work and get the company ahead. So it's totally different in academia and in industry, with respect to, at least in the terms of like visa and other things. And work wise also, I have seen that company has a lot of work life balance than I never seen that in academia. Academia is like, you just keep doing because it's the work is your, so it's like very difficult for you to like stop, make that, okay, I'm going to stop this experiment now and start tomorrow. But in in a company it's always a teamwork, so you cannot really, okay, I'm going to do experiment 8 o'clock and you have to do at 9 o'clock in the evening. No, you have to do experiment when everyone is on the same bench. So it's like it's a teamwork, so it's always you have a very good work life balance, which was a myth totally busted when I joined, because before that I thought, okay, they were giving me so much money, so expecting more, but it never really works that way. It's always like, it's always have a good, because the next day you come in with the same vigor and vitality and you still start working. So I think that's how it is. So it's my 2 cents, and we can discuss more before I, talk more about it. So
We will definitely discuss that point. And I think that's a thing that everybody has. Like, you work in the industry, you have all these deadlines, you have like fast-paced environment. What exactly does the life look like, right? I'm glad that you guys also touched on the visa thing, but I know Titash, even though she's not in USA, she had also had very similar issues, if I remember it correctly. But I'll ask you, Titash, when you were looking for transition, I want you to tell the story for sure, but also, why did you decide on doing a postdoc in an industry? Maybe, like, was that your first target, or were you also looking at scientist positions? On what made you decide on this one? If you could touch on that also while you're talking about your journey.
Sure, sure. So I will just start a bit early because when I was finishing my PhD, which like Abhijit was in basic sciences, and that was the time when I started following the post in STEMPeers and also generally doing Google searches. Like, if I want to work in industry, like when I can see my part of work being taken over as part of the team's overall goals and being something which can be translated, or where I can see a sort of overall output rather than just being a publication. I mean, coming from East and working on something splicing genetic crosses, I did not find too many options, to be like frank. So that is when I decided that I should do a postdoc so that I'm closer to translational research. And therefore, like, in case there is anyone who is finishing their PhD, and if it is in basic science like that, you can consider doing an academic postdoc if other options are not open, because I wanted to come to Europe and directly getting industry position in Europe. I mean, I had applied for certain industry postdoc positions, but they were not entertained. And I did also that time network with a lot of people, like random people, properly introduced myself on LinkedIn, and they were happy to connect and answer. And they, most of them, like almost 90% of them, suggested that I join as an academic postdoc in Europe, because I mean, it kind of built some kind of trust that you have worked in an international atmosphere. I will not go whether this is right or wrong, but if you are in a particular country and if you have worked whether in academia or in industry, it builds some trust, and you are more likely to get call from recruiters than you are based in France and you are expecting recruiter calls from UK. So it is like that. And when I was finishing my postdoc, I had option of extending. And I what I did as part of my postdoc was I chose some high risk high gain projects. Many of them didn't work, but in the process I developed lot of technical expertise on certain techniques, which I knew would be suitable. Like, I could see job adverts on that in LinkedIn. And then it was the middle of the pandemic. I applied for a lot of positions, and that time, because of language issues, which I can talk about later in case there are any takers, for navigating the job scenario in Europe where language can be really an issue, I knew that I wanted to relocate to Germany or to Switzerland or to UK. And then I got a close second in a company in Germany. And then this was a postdoc position in AstraZeneca. But yeah, it was AstraZeneca and it was in the middle of the pandemic. And I did not, I mean, this offer was too good for me to let go. And also I knew that I would be exploring my skill set further, because this project is in team cell line development. So alongside RNA biology, I would be learning cell line development, and that's gonna open more doors for me. So yeah, this was one of the reason why I chose this position. And but also like AstraZeneca tag and learning how to navigate in a big pharma environment, that will help me to choose my next step. So yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. There are some questions in the chat about, how do you, and I think you guys already touched on that, but all of you did talk about networking. So I'm going to like come back to that once. So for me personally, I know when I heard the word networking, I was just like, what does that mean? Like, like, are you just cold texting like messaging somebody on LinkedIn, cold emailing somebody? How does that work? And it took me, and even though like, I always say that I'm a self-proclaimed extrovert, but even for that, just that whole idea of just finding this person and messaging and saying like, hey, can we connect? And then you just don't know how to keep the conversation going, right? So what would be your suggestions after all of you have done this so extensively? Like how do you get over those inhibitions? And what is the very positive side, apart from, being able to have your resume be a part in the company, like being pushed in the company by that person? What are some of the positives that you get out of networking that people can focus on so that they can, get over those inhibitions of reaching out to people for that? So whoever wants to take that on first.
Okay, so I'll take it first. And so one of the things that I did was, thanks to the COVID pandemic, everybody was home. And I used to like send messages on LinkedIn asking people like, can I have an informational interview? Because I had this inhibition of meeting people in person, like how Sohini was mentioning. So this is more like a phone call. So you don't know who you're talking to. It's more like a customer care person that you're talking to, telling your problems and getting an answer for it. I saw it that way. And one of the key things that I actually got out of this networking is how to answer questions, specifically to put it into the industrial jargon. Like people say SME in an industry, and you don't know what an SME is. It's apparently a subject matter expert. So those are things, and they say, okay, follow the JD, follow the JD, follow the JD. And I was like clueless when I started, because these are not the words that you use in an academic forum. And so JD is job description. So I sort of like, start getting into the lingo of industrial terminologies, basically by networking. And also I got a lot about the first question, tell me about yourself, that anybody would ask. I sort of learned the trick on how to answer those only through networking, to be honest. Because when you ask a person, tell me about yourself in an industry, they're going to spin it around what they do every day. They're not going to be talking about their PhD, or they're not going to be talking about, hey, Tracy. It's nice to see Tracy here.
I think she was here already through another profile, if I'm not wrong. Yeah.
It was. I'm sorry, I was lurking, and I had to get on my phone first and then come over here. I'm not interrupting. You guys are doing amazing, and I love everything that you're saying. So I'm not here.
But you are. But we'll pretend you're not here for them.
So yeah, so let me go back to that thing of networking. So one of the key things is like, if you ask, you get. If you're not going to ask, nobody's going to come to your house, knock your door and say, give it to you in a platter. So you got to put your first step. And the key inhibitions is like, talk to people that you know, especially Gurukool platform. There are so many of us. My first networking, to be honest, was to Deepa, because I used to connect with Deepa on STEMPeers. All of a sudden, she put me through her colleague, and I had no idea what to talk to. And I was like telling Deepa, I'm actually a bit scared to talk to this person. This was like 2 years back. And she goes like, you want a job? You're not going to be working with your family or relatives. Go talk. And I was like, okay, that's a
As
key.
God is direct like that. She's very straightforward with her opinions.
Very
And I think that's
straightforward
what
with
you
it.
need. Yes.
Kind of like pushes you to go and talk to. And also
Right.
it's more like, in academic platform, we do converse with people. We do converse with professors when we give our talks and everything. You take that as a cue and put your step forward. That kind of like, pushed me and motivated me to go and ask what you want. And the other thing is I reached out to Tracy and she was amazing. She was like any problem, you just like send her a message and you connect with her and she kind of directs you to the right path to go about. And she was like one of the greatest motivational force for me in this transition as well. And there are a couple of standard questions that's been posted in Gurukool if people can just go through that on how to mitigate networking. So Mansi has put up a very good post on the questions that you can actually ask. And the other thing that I used to keep telling myself is an informational interview or a networking is more like you are questioning that person. So just feel free to ask whatever. If it works, it works. It doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, move on. Take the points, take the cues from them. And how they answer questions can be used in your interview. Because you are also giving an interview to an industrial person who is very familiar with those jargons. So take it from A, give it to B. But the way you give it to B is you polish it with your skill sets and with your expertise and give it to B. So I learned this trick like over 3 or 4 months time because I was started talking to like so many people and kind of like I got the ball rolling all by myself. And also like I used to keep asking Tracy and other people, like I keep mentioning Tracy because I've communicated the most with her during this transition process. So I kind of like, run through answers and do elevator pitches. So elevator pitch is another thing like where you tell about yourself in 30 seconds. So some of the craziest things that I have done is in MD Anderson, I go from, ground floor to the 13th floor, up and down on an elevator, try to tell me about yourself quick. Because that kind of helps you because that's a 30-second journey. And if you can, practice that and master that, you're in the game. And also like, one of the key things that I also try to get out of my inhibition is talking to strangers, like talking to people on an elevator, talking to people on a bus stop, like just, casual having a conversation. Hey, are you waiting for the bus? And I'm like, okay, this is not an informational interview, but I can get over my fear. Or talking to people when you're standing on a grocery store, like just saying, oh yeah, the line's too big. How's the day? Sort of like starting your own conversation. All those things were some things that I did to myself in order to push my inhibitions and move forward. Yeah, I
Those
hope I
great
answered your
things.
question.
Yeah. No, the one thing that I like that you mentioned about how you take points from the person you're talking to because they are in that field and using that, learning how they are talking and then using that to customize your answers. It's something like I recently that at that time a realization hits you. I recently realized that you can do that because like that's how you learn how to customize.
True. I can give you a classic example. When people used to ask me, like, do you have cell culture experience? Before I used to keep telling them, yeah, from my PhD, I've been doing cell culture. And I have 12 years of experience. Nothing worked. And there was one person that I was speaking to. He was working with Western blots for 3 years and he called himself a subject matter expert. And I was like, that's a new term to take to. And then the next interview, I was like, do you know cell culture? I was like, well, I'm an SME in cell culture for the past 12 years. And then that changed the ball game. They were like, okay, we get what you're talking. Because the first person you're talking to is a recruiter who has no scientific background. He just has a paper and he's going to tick off things that's been asked. So there would be a term called SME or a subject matter expert. And if you're hitting that nail, you're in, your CV goes to the next step. So those are some things that I kind of learned, some cues. And Tracy has touched upon on her networking and her informational interview webinars, all these, tiny bits of points, which, are so helpful, to be honest.
For sure. I'll come back to Abhijit because I'm going to add on another question to my to this current question for you. But Titash, there's a question in the chat box also. Is that because you've done both, how is a postdoc in an industry different from that in academia?
Yeah, I have actually answered that
Oh, you did you answer? Oh,
question.
never mind.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Never mind that. I did
Yeah.
not see that part.
But
But
I mean, just following Janani's points, very excellent points. If I can just say that my experience with networking was totally, totally different because I was in France, and I don't know how many of you are aware of it. People speak mostly in French. In fact, in my research institute, I could talk about my own research and troubleshooting maybe to 5 or 7 people, because people are nice, but because you don't speak the language, it is often difficult to build that connection and rapport so that you can discuss your science and ask, why this band is not migrating properly. And then you take the next level of conversation like, hey, I'm trying to transition. Do you want to, what are your long term goals? And that is how networking starts. So for me it was totally virtual. And I, whenever, whatever networking I tried, often there were very little information about job search and the culture fit, everything in Europe, because Europe compared to US is, I would say, still nascent. We have a growing Euro STEMPeers forum. We had an excellent virtual meeting this month, June, in last month. But still I would say it is a more nascent because of various reasons, but it is increasingly becoming more and more attractive. So with regards to networking, I even has these bouts of the classical imposter syndrome, like why would people add me on LinkedIn, or why would somebody want to talk to me? I am nothing. So what I did simultaneously was try to expand my network, but also try to sort of have a professional or personal branding on LinkedIn. So I tried to connect with RNA biologist, because that was something I wanted to stick into. Companies, like following companies, then connecting with academics, professors, postdocs based in US, based in Australia, based in Europe, and also people who have transitioned to industry and they are working on RNA biology. You can track from their publication records. And I send them personalized notes that I am so and so, I am trying to transition. Can we connect? I would like to follow your network. And then one advice I got from one of my mentors at Gurukool, Zui, was that you have to, once you have your network, you need to sustain and nurture it. So, what value can you add as an academic postdoc? That is sharing content, as Janani pointed out. And I saw that initially it was difficult. Like, why would someone, let's say, read my post? I'm not the author. But yeah, you can make it interesting. And also, you can comment on other people's posts. So, if someone sees a nicely collated information on a recent scientific discovery, it shows you that maybe, yeah, you are interested and in that. And one information I would like to share, I started networking in like actively expanding my LinkedIn network in November, September of 2019. And many people turned down options. I mean, they did not connect. Like in Europe, I don't know if you people are aware of the I mean, people don't just pick up the phone and talk. It doesn't work that way. So let's say only 20% to 30% people accepted the LinkedIn Connect, and of that, only 5 to 10% accepted calls for an information interview. But very surprisingly, in 2020 February, when we were beginning in the middle of the pandemic and the lockdowns were, restrictions were imposed, many people actually got back to me, and at least I know 4 5 of them, they reached out to me and they were happy to have a chat. So sometimes people are very busy and they are not active, or for whatever reason. So please don't take it to your heart if someone refuses to have that chat. Please just reach out to many people of your interest, and a fraction of them will get back to you. And as Janani pointed out, it is some conversations which totally changes the game, and try to apply for jobs to begin with. And this is again something Ananda had pointed out, because something many of you might feel is, okay, I want to transition, I want to transition to industry, or I want to become a medical writer, but when do I start to apply? Am I ready yet? So may you, yeah, you can follow Tracy's like a course of a journey through Gurukul. So Gurukul takes us through that journey. But also something Ananda pointed out is like, making a CV just like that, it doesn't make a sense. A CV has to be custom fit to a JD. So that will begin only when you start applying. Pick up a job that you want to. Maybe you're not ready, but it doesn't hurt to customize your CV according to that, and then start posting it in Gurukul. Take everybody's pointers and go for it. So I would say, as you are planning to transition, I would say, like, follow the lectures, everything, but start applying, because things will improve. Even now, when I look back at my CV from 1 year, I don't want to look at it again. So it's a continuously growing process. And I would say, please start from the go, and don't feel that you can add value to your network by sharing content, and just go for it. The more you practice, you will be better.
Those are very good points. And actually, even I remember when I joined Gurukul, I wanted to transition to R&D. And I remember I first had I had a talk with Ananda. He was the first person I talked to on Gurukul. He was like, yeah, start applying. And I was like, with what? Like, I don't have anything done. Like, I don't know what I'm applying to. You keep talking about networking. I have no idea what it is. Like, no, you need to start. In fact, Janani mentioned Roshni, and I want to tell everybody who's here, like, Roshni is another amazing person. And as Tita said, customizing, she actually made me customize a resume using a job description that might be of interest to me, just so that she could teach me how to do that. And those are the kind of things you get from Gurukul, people in Gurukul, who will sit with you, will exchange emails, so that this happens. In fact, Abhijit, even when I knew him like last year, I think he's like, send me your resume. I think there's this one thing that might be of interest to you, but I was just like, I was not graduating at that point of time. But there are people who do reach out, and who are there to support you, who will spend that time with you to actually help you out with things that, sometimes you're hesitant to ask questions because you think that everybody else they know exactly. But no, there are a lot of people in the same boat, even if they have been a part of Gurukul for a long time or may have just joined, but they're probably all hesitant to ask these questions. But ask these questions, get all these feedback. You don't need 20 people answering your questions, right? If you have just like one person who's sitting with you and customizing, like helping you customize or improve your profile better, I think that's what you need, right? And even especially with Roshni, I'll tell you how I reached out to her. The one thing that I keep telling a lot of people is that Gurukul has a lot of resources already from the different discussions that have gone on over so many years. Some things have not changed. While a lot of things may have changed, some things have not. One is, we have Tracy's webinars, and she adds content to it every single time. There's more and more, but to get the basic idea, we have some of those webinars already on the site. Go through them, like just listen to them, because she starts off with like this 10-step journey from thinking of your transition to actually making it, and which is, I think, a big thing, like planning your transition, because you can think differently as and when you like life changes, if I may say. But also go through the post, and that's how I got to know that Roshni is that one person to reach out for LinkedIn, because she was acting with the LinkedIn expert, and I did. And she's no longer just the LinkedIn expert, she's a good friend of mine. I know she's wonderful. But you just do that, like take that time to go through the post. And you also get to know that there are some people, as Jana said, the subject matter experts of one particular thing in transition, like they have done this so many times, they will know how to guide you and how to make this better. Okay, I'll come back to Abhijit with the same question about like were you ever was networking ever an inhibition for you? And if it was, how you got over it? And I'm going to ask another question to you, because you work at a startup. Was working in a startup a conscious decision? Did you try to ask people questions about whether to go into startup versus, mid-size or big pharma? And why did you make this final decision?
Okay, all good questions. So to begin with about the networking now. So networking, I think I am, as you said, we are like extrovert kind of people. So it was fine with me in the beginning, but talking to people and then talking to people for networking is a little different, I would say. So for me, I think it took me a while to get over to that part where exactly how is gonna what is there for the networking. When you talk to someone, you just talk, you chat, but then you actually do networking. It's also giving to each other kind of a thing, at times that the network is not always ask or not always give. It's always give and take relationship. And the first thing that people have told me when I was started networking is that you have to show that how valuable you are to the next person, and that the other way around also is true for you. So for networking, the main thing that I started doing was, as I said, that I was talking to everyone, all the Bay Area postdocs. So that was my niche when I came to Bay Area, is that all the postdocs in the niche, because you tend to talk to the different amount of different people. So I used to attend all these different seminars, all these different the postdoc events and everything, and then you keep that, and then it's not like you just talk to them once and then you just forget about it. No, you keep them in in contact, okay, if you have any questions or anything, or if you as as Tita said, that okay, if you find something interesting by there, some interesting paper. I mean, you can't do that for everyone, of course, but then the people who actually you see, okay, you see some nice paper by one of your contact, you can just say, okay, this is a nice paper, and then you can just talk about that very briefly, 1 or 2 lines, and then post it. It's not really harm, because that shows the value, that shows the worth actually, when you do those things. And also that also helped me in the next step, because now once you're talking to only the postdocs, but then those are those guys are going to go to next level. They're going to go to industry. So as I said, that in the industry, I have my contacts, or my LinkedIn contacts are in different fields, not only in industry. So then you talk to them, you get to understand okay, what is their job profile, what is there. So you don't really think about only short term, but it's a long term goal, where you try to understand. Even if you want to ask them for the informational interview, whom you met 3 or 4 years back, definitely they would say yes. Then to you just give some cold call to some person, and then he or may not even reply because they're busy or something. But if they're already in your profile, then they, at least till now, 90% of the people whom I have asked for the informational interviews, they have said yes. 90%. Only 10% they would say okay, they are busy or something, but 90%, so which is a good number. So that is the main point over there, to in terms of networking. And then also, if I would always say that if I'm applying to some company or somewhere, and if I don't know anyone, but my secondary contact know, then I would ask them, okay, someone from the company, and then they would introduce me to that person, and then I would keep that conversation going ahead, because then you don't really have to worry about the cold messaging to someone, where you are worried about whether you're going to get answer or not. So that's one thing. The second thing that I have, I used to do that before, but I'm doing that a lot in the Gurukool, is that giving back to the community, giving back to the people. I'm Janani, when she contacted me about my O1, because I got my O1 and everything, and then she saw my post, and then okay, so I have this question. So almost every weekend after that, I'm talking to 1 or 2 people. I think Iru is also here, then Janani. There are so many different people I spoke to on over this last last year. I just talk to people about if they want anything about the O1, about industry. So that's also networking. It is not that you are you are giving to the community just to as altruistic thing. No, you learn more. You talk to people, you make your tomorrow Janani would go to some other nice company, and then okay, share this nice job opportunity, okay, Abhijit, you want to come and join in. So, and it's those things. It's it is not you're asking or telling. It's just all about keeping these connections ongoing.
You
And
need to remember this, Janani. When you transition next, you need to reach out to Abhijit and be like, hey, there's a post. Are you interested or not?
I was more about going to ask him which is a good place to hike, but he's he wants a job.
Yeah, he
No, I
wants a
can
job.
tell you hike as well. Don't worry. Yeah, I'll give you hiking tips too. Yeah. And to answer your second question, I think I was so when I spoke to again all my networks and everything, I realized that the big going to a big company is always it's always nice and good, but then you most likely you get to like typecasted to only one job. Mostly, it may be that you tend to learn other things, but for the big companies, for the international person, is always a very competition because they would get applications from everywhere, from all the people, and then there are people who don't need a visa and they have work authorization, or the visa regulations are like maybe a green card, so they don't even like, you are always put in the, like the next bucket, not like the immediate bucket. That's one of the major issues. So I was only targeting for the mid size and the startup. And then I decided to join startup because I spoke to different people. And startup is something like after academia is really good for you, because in academia you learn only one aspect, which is like the research. But when you go to like startup, you tend to learn everything, like different, like you tend to wear different hats, like you tend to like understand the IND profiling, like how they do IND filing, and then you also know like how the talk study works, like all these different word terminologies that Janani was talking about. What is talk study? I mean, I never heard about talk study before, but like no, toxicology study where you do like all these different things. So all these things are like you don't really feel a part of the basic research. You tend to learn, and then you can decide, okay, you like more regulatory affairs, you like more IND. Like before you go to industry, you can't even know all these things. So after you join them, at least you see, even though you are not a part of it, you see it happening, because the next person to you, like who's doing that, and it's a scientist. I mean, in the startup there is no like, okay, well, there is a regulatory person, there's a finance person, there is something like, it's not, the job is not really only on one person. It's like everyone gets that. So when we just recently wrote a patent, it's like we all of us part of that, like only there are like 6 scientists, and we all are part of that process. So it is not like one person, okay, so we gave it to attorney and attorney is taking care of that. Of course attorney is going to take care of that, but then the previous step is that you tend to learn how the patent is formed, what you data you put. So all these things. So I think that was one of my motivation to join the startup, to get a hold of like all the aspect of startup, because then once you go from here, then if the startup grows well, it's perfect and fantastic. But if you, let's say, more startup, if they don't really, so at least when for your next move, what side you're going to do in the R&D, also what research team you would want to be part of, what are the other things that you expect, what is the company that they are expecting from you in return, like if you're R&D scientist, what the company actually expects from you, like all those different small things that you don't really get as a scientist in academia, you tend to get that in startup. So that's the reason I think I joined startup. But yeah, does that answer your question, Soini?
Yes, yes, you did. And actually, it like I just realized we have representations from big pharma, mid-size, and startups. So I'm going to ask a few questions so that we get all the different perspectives over here. I know Titash wanted to say something. Titash, you go ahead and then I'll ask the
Yeah,
question.
yeah. So again, I keep talking about Europe because so I would like to just mention that this visa sponsorship, which is a step for international applicants, this actually depends on whether a big pharma is likely to sponsor you or a startup is going to sponsor you. This is very variable on depending on the country. Okay, so for example, in UK, only big pharma, I know based on my network that only there are 3 to 4 companies who can sponsor my visa. Other companies, startups, I get many, like average 2 to 3 calls from recruiters every day, and the moment they hear that my passport is Indian, their tone changes. Okay, thank you, bye. So now I know that how does it work, and this is very variable. This is like this in UK, but it is totally different in Netherlands and totally different in Switzerland. So in some countries, big pharma will sponsor your visa, but in some countries, as Abhijit pointed out, perhaps in US, startups are more likely to pull in resources to hire you. So again, I would stress upon, please mark your territories or mark your selected companies in different countries and try to network, try to build a network of so that you get accurate information on that. And I totally agree because now I'm working in big pharma, and I am, for example, I am trying to find people who have worked as industry postdocs before in big pharma and what they're doing now. And I am sort of comparing my experience, 6 months experience, but still my feelings and what are my projections and how did it compare with industry postdocs. And as Abhijit pointed out, it's true that in a big pharma, in a giant like AstraZeneca or like Merck, you're put in a corner, and if you want to do any particular assay, you just outsource it to team A. Yeah, you learn a lot of big organization, and you can actually exploit and collaborate. You can take your project in different directions, but you are in your expertise and you don't massively build it further. So if you feel that you want to expand your skill set more, or if you are in a wet lab bench lab position, and maybe while on this industry role, you want to know whether you want to shift into business development, or you want to shift into regulatory affairs, you want to know how does it feel like, startup would be a better place. Because in a big company like uh, these where I am there, or where I know other industry postdocs that has been there there are too many blocks and channels, and you don't really get to see what happens on the other side. So that way, startup or a small medium enterprise would be better to have a in-person interaction and a better know-how of how other components of the business works. And second is that in a big company, like there is a lot of hierarchy. So if for example, I'm an industry postdoc, then there will be a scientist one position, and then scientist two, and then associate principal, and like that. So this progression takes, for example, 15 to 20 years or 25 years, like that. I am not the best person to talk about it, but I have networked with a lot of people in the past few months. I talked with Raghu, I talked with Gaurav, and talked with couple other people outside of Gurukul, and they all felt that if you want to grow faster, probably joining a startup would be a better idea. But if you want to work where you are want a more stable job, or where you want to be based in a particular city, there are many other constraints, right, in life, which we are not even talking here. Then perhaps joining a big pharma would be good, because there would be more chance of getting absorbed in some other department. So yeah, and I would again like to stress that please reach out to your network in and build a network in your city of choice and for your companies of interest. It has to be very specific, so that you get the best information, if that is possible.
Those are very, very good points, Sitash, especially just giving your like experience on how how it works in a big company, and then making sure, yes, you like uh, as you pointed out, we're not talking about a lot of different things. Some people are constrained by a lot of different things, in which city they can work in, where they can work in, what kind of lifestyle, if I may say, they have. So that is a big factor. And I think that's where also networking, talking to the people in a particular company and also in a particular geographic location is very helpful in understanding how the company works, how the people in the company are treated, or what kind of experience that they get. Because I think those are some important questions that you would want to ask when you're reaching out to people to make a decision, make your decision. But okay, so we heard from Abhijit about working in a startup, and he also pointed out very correctly in the chat box that startups success is not always certain, and that's why people are hesitant about reaching out to startups. But you do get all these different experiences, when you're working in a startup, as opposed to having a more, I would say, more structured and maybe slightly constrained setup that you would have in a big company. Coming to Janani, you're in the mid-sized
So
company. So what is your take on
the
that?
mid-sized pharma is a blend of both. It's a blend of both a startup and a well-established big pharma, to be honest, from my opinion. Because the company recently transitioned from being a startup but entering into the phase of being a big size pharma, meaning that they have a NASDAQ stock thing, and they've increased the number of people, and everything is like happening not over the course of time, but all of a sudden. when they have transitioned from this zone. So you do find a little bit of in a mid-sized pharma, which has been mid-sized for about a year now, it's kind of like still they're fine-tuning the roles, still they're fine-tuning the positions. But again, you do wear a lot of hats, not like a startup, but you do wear hats where you are given the opportunity to learn other things as well. You're not constrained to just your field of work like a big size pharma where you're assigned your daily task and you do that and you're done. No, you also have the leverage of learning other things. They also value your opinion, at least from the company that I work for. They value my opinion. And if I say, okay, I am an expert in ABC, but I'm also interested what the company does with DCE. And they were like, sure, you can do that, but finish your task first and then you can do that. You can learn. So the company also helps in career growth, and individual growth. And they also have mentors, which they try to mentor you so you are on the path to success. It's a blend of both, I can say. It's a blend of both startup as well as a mid-sized pharma. But I was in a lab with 12 people. So it was more like working for a startup in an academic environment with 12 different postdocs working with 12 different stuff. Um, so I was there for like 4.5 years, and I feel that the transition that I had now is almost like a mirror, because the team that I work for is also consists of 12 people, except that I have people reporting to me directly, which is like, oh wow, okay, which I'm not used to. And people value your opinion in an industry, which is great. And also, like Abhijit was mentioning before, the work-life balance is amazing. Being on the other side, I get my weekends, I get my holidays, and nobody constantly bombards you with emails, and nobody constantly reaches you out on chat asking where is this, where is that, because it is a teamwork and you work from 9 to 5, you get your job done, you're out of office, you're out of work. Which is amazing. And the first thing that actually fascinated me when I moved to an industry and I was shocked was the meetings lasted for 30 minutes, was for 30 minutes, which was amazing. It never exceeded. And I was like, what? The meeting is done? They were like, yeah, 30 minutes, your time is valued. And I was like, oh, wow. Because our group meetings used to go for 3 hours, and the end of the time, like half of us used to cry. We were like, oh my God, my boss said this, my boss said that. But here it's more like, oh, I have another meeting, drop off, go for the next call. And I was like, I still find it very fascinating, to be honest. So yeah, working for a mid-sized pharma gives you a leverage of working for both, moving towards a big pharmaceutical in a more structured manner. Again, your promotions and everything is still a little bit of haywire here and there, depending on how the company is going to grow. But it's a little bit more structured, and you do have your defined roles when you're in a mid-sized pharma. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, for sure. I have one final question to ask all three of you, and then again, I'll open it up if anybody wants to unmute themselves, ask questions, or continue asking questions as they have been in the chat. They're welcome to do that. But before that, because Abhijit and Janani already touched on it, Titash, how's the work-life balance of an industrial postdoc at AstraZeneca?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you can have your weekends and you can have your holidays, and you have a target of 38 hours or 40 hours. If you finish that, and also you can work from home. So I used to think that it's not possible unless you are in IT to work from home, but it is possible. You can write your electronic lab notebooks while you are in home. And also the data organization and overall your working, this is digressing from your question a little bit, it has to be very compliant where you when you are working in industry. This is one major difference that I found between academia and industry. So you have to be very compliant to the SOPs compared to what happens in the lab protocols. And the other thing is you have to manage your work better, because you have a lot of meetings. Anything and everything goes through a meeting. So I'm getting used to working with headsets, doing a meeting and loading a gel. So these are small things, but other than that, it is very similar. And again, your time is valued, and you have a amazing work life balance, and there are additional perks. and the pay is also comparatively better. So these are all very good points of working in an industry. And I think, like many of you, when I was doing my masters, I had this notion that if I'm in industry, they will like make me work so hard, and that's all I knew about working in an industry. But it is actually the opposite way around, and the biggest satisfaction would be that it is something translational. And even if I drop off tomorrow, I know that this work will be carried on by somebody else in the team. Unlike what happened during my PhD, in my final year of PhD, I had an accident and I had to change my project. And then the 4 years of work, they never saw the light of the day. So that can be really disappointing in academia. When you leave work or something happens, then that work stops. It's a waste of your efforts and resources, everything. But in industry, it is somehow absorbed and taken care of. You're working in a team, so that gives me more satisfaction.
Okay, that's great to know. Okay, my final question is that if you guys could just walk us through your application process for the role and the company that you currently are in right now. So like from applying, like from the resume all the way to the interviews, and how exactly your interviews happen, and to getting that final call. Very briefly, if you just want like touch on that.
Okay, so for me, the recruiter reached out to me through LinkedIn, looking at the posts that I've been posting, honestly. So then I gave an interview last August, and then I had to pull out my application midway because I felt like it was not going in the right direction. And then the company reached out to me again in November asking, the position is still open, we are still interested with you, are you interested to join? I was like, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And then December, I sort of got an offer letter. And by then I also had 3 other offer letters in hand. And I was like picking and choosing which one I want to do. And December end, I had to go to India. So I went back home and I didn't know if I was coming back because there was a family emergency. The company waited for 2 more months. And then I came back in end of January, and then they reached out to me again asking if I was interested. And then I said, okay, fine. Yeah, start your O1 process. And then they filed my O1, and now I'm working for this industry. It all started with LinkedIn, to be very honest. Like my success story goes back to LinkedIn. I'm very grateful for that. The company, so the other cue is also connect to recruiters. If you don't want to connect and talk to people, connect to recruiters. Like big farmers do have recruiters, and recruiters are super active on LinkedIn. You connect to some recruiter, but then another company will reach out to you who is playing a hide and seek inside LinkedIn. So yes, my entire thing was this particular company's position that I am sitting today is because they reached out to me on LinkedIn. And when I told them that I need a visa, it was not a constraint because I gave the interview and the hiring manager was very much happy to take me. So they almost waited 8 months for me to join the job.
Wow.
It was going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then it was like, I had to pull out my application, and then it finally worked out. Now I am working here for the same position, for the same role.
Wow. How many rounds of interview did you have? Like, how
So
did they?
I had, first was a recruiter round where they did an initial screening to make sure that I fit in what they were looking for. Because this came to me, it was more like a conversation. They were like asking me if I knew this ABC technique. And then immediately the same day evening, I had a call from the hiring manager, and we spoke over phone for 30 minutes. And then I had 4 interviews with the higher up management over Zoom. That was like 4 interview calls for 30 minutes each, where they spoke about their company. This company was very different, to be honest. Like it was more interactive. So they spoke about their company. They asked me about my expectations. They asked me about my career path, and I asked about the company's career path. I asked all my doubts that I had with an industry, and then pretty much 4 rounds of Zoom calls, and then the recruiter connected back to me saying that we have an offer letter for you. And that stage, then I had to pull out because I just got a H1B and I didn't want to leave my lab. I was just trying to be this nice girl, and then I pulled out the card, and then 3 months later, again they reached out to me. They said, like, we're still interested with you. Are you really interested? And I was like, yes. Again pulled out, and again they were like, okay, here's the offer letter, and finally now I am. So if they want you, yeah, they come back to you. That's for sure. Yeah, I used to always think, when looking at stories in LinkedIn, like, oh, the position was created for me. And I'm like, wait, what? Does this even happen? And it clearly happened to me for all the 4 roles that I had. There were some of the roles that I was going back and forth for almost a year. And the role was created. The role is created. If they want you, they will take you no matter what, whatever be the hurdles. It's nothing. Because they are looking for people with expertise, and it's mostly through LinkedIn. So if you get a message from a recruiter, even if you don't like the job, it's worthwhile talking to them to get their perspective. I used to talk to people, like, there are some companies where I didn't even like the job profile because I knew I was not going to do this day in and day out, but I still spoke to them to get a perspective of what the company is and how they value the candidate. And so, yeah, all this was my story, I could say.
Yeah, that's
Janani, I wanted to just quickly ask you something relevant that you said. So usually it's considered that women are not good at negotiation, but then you said that they have been going forward and backward and they waited
I
for
am
you
a
so
tough
long. Is there a
negotiator.
tip or two that you can share on that aspect?
Okay, I'm a very tough negotiator. I put my foot down and I ballpark the numbers. I'm pretty sure Tracy can say that because she was on the loop. Tracy, do you have any comments to add on this?
Sorry, I was distracted for a second. What was the question?
Women are a tough negotiator, and she asked me how I negotiated. You had been in my, the entire story of my.
So women, it can be more difficult for a woman to be in that position than asking for more. It's not the easiest thing. Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just realized that my headset wasn't on. Negotiating for women is not always easy. It's a lot of times you feel like you can't ask for more or whatnot. Is this from the perspective of the person negotiating is a woman, or the person that you're negotiating with is a woman?
No, as a woman, if I have to negotiate, I know that women always underplay their expertise and their
Absolutely.
ability. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, do we have negotiation this time? We do not. But there is, I have done a webinar in the past. I will say for all of you, I mean, we can slice that, negotiation and whether people do it well or not by gender, but we can also slice it by every other level of diversity, right? So if you're a first generation scientist, chances are you're going to have less in positive feelings about negotiating, right? If you are at your first job, you're going to feel less, right? Like the next job, it's going to be easier. If you are international, like there's all these pressures, like cultural pressures. Like if you're not of the majority of whatever that diversity slice is, you may feel less inclined or less supported to do that negotiation. So, take a look at the video that we've done in the past, and there's some resources there. There's a lot of resources online. I would say Harvard Business Review is probably the best resources for negotiating. Harvard has the program on negotiating. I'm not saying go get a $5,000 whatever dollar degree in negotiating. I'm saying, look at the resources that they've published, the articles and whatnot, to get a sense on what that looks like. At the end of the day, right? And all of those are just tips and tricks, and you're going to need to figure out what's going to work for you. But at the end of the day, who you are, you have to own that. You have to be assertive about that. And I'm not saying, right. I'm saying you have to own your experience and get to the place that you are comfortable with not downplaying it. I do it too, right? I mean, there have been some content questions today where people would say, oh, you know, thank you, Tracy, help me with this, Tracy, help me with this. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Right. But I should own that. Right. And I should, you know, I do acknowledge, you know, thank you for the feedback and the appreciation today. I do appreciate that. But I also want to acknowledge that, you know, you guys are all amazing. And like, I'm not the one who's doing the I didn't do any of the interviews for Janani. She did them all, right? I didn't actually connect with any of those people. She did it all. Like, I was there supporting, but I wasn't, you know, and I can, you know, give you a lecture on how to write your resume. If you want private coaching on that, we can talk about that. You know, if wherever you're at in those spaces, you know, there's all different kinds of ways to have all different mentors supporting you. But at the end of the day, you guys have to do it. Like, even for me, like if I want to change my role and I want to do something different, I have to go after it. I can't rely on anybody else to do it. So yes, negotiating is challenging. Sorry to put you back and then I'm going to shush. Negotiation can be challenging, but you know, having a strategic thing, right? It's not just, well, they're offering me, you know, X amount of dollars and I want 10% more, period. It's so much more complicated than that. It's your benefits, it's your 401k, it's, you know, stock options, you know, relocation. There's a good one, right? My start date. You can actually negotiate your start date. So I see everybody nodding. I'm gonna let you guys go back to the thing. Like I said, I'm here, but not here. I'm here to support, not to take over. This is their story. This is not me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tracy, for coming in. Yeah, it's like how she mentioned, negotiating is something. If you're asking from the salary perspective, I looked at salary.com. I put in my years of experience that was asked on the JD. It was not the industrial experience, but the years of experience for the particular technique that they were looking for. Again, going back to cell culture, like I have 12 years of experience. So I put in the 12 years of experience and I wanted it to be valued right from my PhD days. Your experience remains an experience irrespective of whether you do it in your academic setting or an industry setting, because you're going to be doing the same thing. And then you talk it through. You tell them like, okay, this is the skill set you're looking for. I have this many years of experience, which can be backed up by these many number of publications that I have, because publications are something which can tell you that you have this particular skill set. So you're just trying to back things up. And also looking at the whole deal as such, not just salary, like the whole package as such, looking for 401, looking for your holidays, looking for your medical benefits, and looking for other indirect means of things, and seeing how much is it going to cost the company. You do not play by saying, okay, they're going to be paying for my O1 visa, so I will, bring it down. No. Like if someone's going to ask me for an NGS technology, I have like 3 years of experience, but I can't pull up big numbers on that. Whereas if they ask me for cell culture, I have 12 years of experience and I can pull numbers on that. And I can tell them that, this is my experience and this is all I have done. If you're asking from the salary perspective, but there is a lot to do with negotiation. You can also do your start date, push, like how I kept back and forth. And I looked at the whole package as such. I never gave numbers as such at the start. Every time they were asking me for numbers, I said, like, I would like to look at the deal, the whole full deal, the full package, and then talk about it. I also backed up some things using salary.com. And, just said like, okay, this is in this percentile. I'm looking for a slightly above range, because that gives you an histogram and sort of this. I hope we answered your question, Shabana.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank
Because
you.
we're kind of a little bit over time right now. So I'll have Abhijit and Titash just go over their application and interview process, and then maybe take last couple final questions from the audience. Okay.
So for me, it was like, as I mentioned, that one of my friend was there in their next door company. So she actually pushed my resume. So the first was like generally like a recruiter call. In this case, it was all the it was only with the CEO because it's a small company. But then That was my like first interview. Then I had an on-site interview, because at that time it was still, the on-site was still a thing, on-site interview. Right now it's all Zoom, but it was just before the pandemic hit, so it was in February last year sometime, so I could at least go on site and then give an interview, in-person interview. Then I had an interview, another round of interview after that with the co-founder and other people, and then that's it. They just offered me like next day. So the whole process lasted for less than 2 weeks, which was really fast, I would say. But I know that, like most of the time it generally happens that you have like a recruiter interview, the first interview with the recruiter, then it goes to hiring manager, then you talk with the hiring manager, then you go for the next one, to the whole interview with all the different people from the company. And then the next step would be, again you go back to the hiring manager, and then you get an offer and other things, then you negotiate with the HR. So it's pretty long process. For me it was short because of the startup, and it's like everything is in the CEO's hand, and you talk to CEO all the time, because there are only like 4 to 5 people in there. But that's what's for me. And again, so that's what I just want to like stress one thing about the LinkedIn. So you always have to, like, if you know someone, pushing through resume through someone is always helpful. And being said that, I already started getting LinkedIn requests from different people, so it always helpful just to add some note to it when you like personalize the invite. Because if you just randomly send me in like, I won't know really what. And I get like so many requests, I just may not even have like, if you don't tell me where we met, or how do you know me, or what you exactly want from that, it's going to be like really difficult for me to like answer you in a way. So that's one thing, that just one quick thing about LinkedIn request. Just give some perspective to your why you're sending the LinkedIn request to the person. Okay, Siddharth.
Exactly. Yeah. Even if you like, just to say, even if you have like just met them in a talk like this and have interacted with them, assume that they won't remember you, and still add that note, like irrespective of who you're reaching out to. Like I remember I had reached out to a very good acquaintance of mine, and there was still a note because I knew very well that person would know me, but it's just that it's a LinkedIn courtesy to me, or it's just a very general courtesy to just say why you're reaching out to that person. And also one thing, there was a discussion on STEMPeers on the main page. When you are connecting with somebody through your phone, your LinkedIn app, the connection request goes automatically. You don't get that notification to add a note that you do through your desktop. Okay, so always make sure when if you're connecting with somebody through the LinkedIn app on phone, do add the message first, add that message, and then send the connection request. Or otherwise, just to be on the safer side, to do it through your desktop, because there was a whole conversation that I remember that happened. So yeah, you do not want to make that mistake again. All right, Titash, your story, your whole application. Yeah.
In the interest of time, I will try to go very fast. So everything was during the pandemic, as we were stepping on to the virtual procedure, and I could sense that things were also equally messed up on the side of AstraZeneca. And also I am one of the first postdoc in the division, biopharmaceutical division. So this was a new process for me. And often there is variability in interviews between in big pharma. So if you are networking with somebody and preparing for a big pharma interview, there could be changes in your schedule. So be prepared for that. And so I had overall applied to around 50 positions, and only like five of them where I had around 60 to 80% match. I got back like screening for pre-screening with an HR and a hiring manager for a telephonic call, including AstraZeneca, and for a CRO in Germany, and another startup in Switzerland, and two other companies. So three of them, because of visa, they did not take it up forward. And I had two round of interviews for the German CRO and at AstraZeneca. So for AstraZeneca, after this pre-screening, there was one Zoom call which was like for 30 minutes, and this was after 1 month of the pre-screening. So, and in that first round of interview, I did not give a technical presentation, but they asked me questions to find out about my personality and about my technical expertise. And then 1 month after that, they invited me for full-on technical interview. It was through MS Teams, and I remember I had a very fancy animation which did not work. And the best part was I was very calm during the presentation, even when that did not work. And actually, one of the manager of my present line manager, she said, "You have done very well considering there were so many technical glitches." So you know your stuff best. Think like that. Like, don't think that they are big people when you are actually giving the interview. And then after that, after giving this technical interview, after a point of 1 month, that is when the HR kept in. So he is a global HR manager for Postdoc. He came in, and then he gave me an offer. And with terms of negotiation, I feel my skills are good with respect to my experience with shopping, street shopping in India and other aspects. But this was my first interview, and my first job interview in a company. But I talked with lot of people, I did lot of homework, even for the point that when I'm dealing with the HR, what is the best way. And I think I had posted this in Gurukool, or talked with people, and Raghu suggested it is always better to have, face to face Teams call, request for a Teams call, do not write an email. And I did that. I had 2 rounds of negotiation, and that point of time I spoke with multiple people. So this is where networking really helped. By that time, I had a strong network of 3 people in AstraZeneca: Ashwin from Maryland, and Nisha from AstraZeneca, Cambridge. And also, I spoke with Hina. Hina is in Vartex, also in UK. And I spoke with other people who were working in Cambridge in startups. And by talking with all of them, because it was a really, good level of networking, that I could ask about salary. I cannot randomly connect with somebody and in the first conversation talk about salary, right? So as I was making progress, making to the second round, I was optimistic, and I developed the connections with my UK and AstraZeneca based network. And I also randomly connected with AstraZeneca postdocs. And maybe I was a little too far stretched, but I like asked them, like, "Hey, I have no work experience in UK. I'm really looking for a threshold, because Glassdoor's information is widely variable for these kind of positions." And I had a very good estimate of numbers. And that was also one of the reason why I took up this fixed term position as an industry postdoc, because the pay was really comparable to what they were paying to senior scientists in Cambridge for these kind of positions. So with all this information and mental support from Gurukul mentors, I did 2 rounds of negotiation. And again, that was when I got to know that you have to ask for the package, overall deal, holidays, everything, and an increase on the base pay. So the base pay, they increased up to a point. They couldn't go beyond that, but they went from zero relocation balance. They don't mention it. I asked for it, and then they gave it. And when they couldn't improve the base pay anymore, they doubled up the relocation package. So I got a relocation package, but I will mention this. This relocation package for fixed term positions can be like a bond. So if I want to leave in the first year, I have to pay it back. And if I leave in the second year, I have to pay 50% of that. And actually, that is a taxable. So if I live in the first year, this is just information I'm sharing because I didn't know about it when I joined. And this is also one of the reason another industry postdoc didn't leave, because he was given a good amount of relocation, because he switched between coast in US. And then you get it's taxable, you get 50% of the money, but you have to pay back 100%, right? So try, whenever you are on to that point, please have, as and when you feel that your technical interview has gone well, network with people in the company or having that same profile in the same region, and have that kind of rapport so that you can ask these questions. And be prepared. Even if it doesn't work to the point of negotiation, the best is you will learn. So overall, my journey took place from February, or no, maybe April, where the advertisement came on LinkedIn. and I joined in November. So that was the thing with visa sponsorship and everything, and the pandemic and travel restrictions and everything. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Um, I am done with all the questions because I think this was great because I didn't have to ask half of the questions. You guys just touched on everything that was in my list. I remember I was going back to my list and I kept ticking off points and I didn't even ask those questions. So this was absolutely wonderful. We have time for 2 to 3 questions because we're already an hour and a half in right now. So we'll let people disperse. I'm sure everybody will have weekend plans, but yes, if we have like 1 or 2 or 2 or 3 questions, we can take them up. Anybody?
Can I get in?
Yeah, sure.
Hello everyone. I hope you guys can hear me, right? Okay, so my name is Shohag and I'm located in New York City and doing my PhD. I mean, I'm towards the end of my PhD, and so I'm applying for jobs. So I'm looking for academic postdocs, but I'm mostly interested in getting into industry. So I'm actively looking for industrial positions. Now, the thing is, I have started working on my industrial resume, and whatever samples I'm getting, like I've started feeling like this inferiority complex because I see that I have very small number of technical skills as compared to the job descriptions that I'm looking on LinkedIn or in the company job portals. So the one of the things that I'm facing is, obviously I'm looking for industrial postdoc positions, but obviously all companies don't have it, and obviously startups and mid-sized companies also don't have the industrial postdoc roles. So I was wondering, I know like most of you have done your academic postdocs and then transitioned into industry, but in situations like mine, where I'm trying to get into industry directly from a PhD, what kind of roles I should look for. The reason I'm asking this question is when I'm looking into positions like research associate or research assistant, the qualifications they're asking is bachelor's or master's with industrial experience. Or if I'm going to some higher positions, they are asking, obviously they want PhD, but apart from that, they are looking for people who have done academic postdocs or have industrial experiences. So how do you deal with this kind of situation? So that is one of my questions.
If I can answer that. So first of all, they will probably not hire you at all for research associate or research assistant positions because you have a different degree, and that will change their constraints of pay. So in those cases, either they have to, open a position for you and take you. So that may probably you can strike off of that list, but you can express your interest and express a note to the hiring manager that this position is very similar to my skills. I have a PhD. It will be great if we could stay connected, and if you could please let me know if there is a position suitable for my expertise. I am XXY. Thank you, like that. And then so industry positions, you are a fresh PhD. Industry postdoc positions will be a good fit for you, but you should not restrict yourself on that. There will be many examples if you search well within STEMPeers itself, where people have done their PhDs and they have directly transitioned to scientist roles. It is, of course, easy for people who are native of that country because of visa sponsorship, perhaps little difficult for international students. That is, people who are doing their PhD from India. But if you are already based in US, probably it will be easy. So again, you have to sell yourself. You have done your PhD, which means you have 4+ years experience on that particular thing. So you have to show that you have the best you are best for that role, or what is your unique characteristics that you bring on the table. If during your PhD you have collaborated with a particular company, or you have helped in writing a grant, and you have to make everything very quantitative, like you have made 3 collaborations, you have liaised with 3 different companies, international collaboration, you have experience working across time zones, and whatever you did resulted in 3 publications, and that you are working comfortable working independently as well as a team, which is evident in the form of multiple authorships, not just first author but middle authors, like that. So don't restrict yourself, apply and build your worst case. You will not get the job, but you will build your network and you'll get experience. And also try for industry postdoc positions. That would be a good fit, but don't restrict yourself to that. Try for industry positions as well. If they are going to take you, compared to a PhD and an academic postdoc of 5 years, perhaps they will pay you more. So you are actually an attractive candidate for them if you're joining early. So don't think that you are at a disadvantage. You are actually at an advantage on some points. So yeah, good luck.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your tips. Thank you.
Adding my 2 cents here to what Tisha had actually said, she actually touched up all the points. One more thing that an industry person looks for is management skills. And as a PhD, you do have the management skills in an indirect way. It's like, procuring chemicals. When a chemical is going to run out, you make sure that it's available, not just for you, but for the lab as such. So that's something that you could quantitate on your resume by saying that you are good at management, making sure that the lab resources are available. So that's a very good point to quantitate. So half of the company looks for team-oriented roles, looks for management, looks for interpersonal skills, looks for liaising. This is all something that you have done. You can just put all that in your resume. You can quantitate it with your experience, and when they ask you, you can spin a story around it, like how you did all this. So yeah, don't lose heart, just keep networking, and definitely it will work out. If you're a fresh PhD, yes, most of the companies do look for scientist one position, which is like the starting position. If you're looking for an R&D, you don't have to match all the technical skills, but yes, you do need to match the team skills and how you're going to work within a team. And also your interpersonal skills are the most that's valued. Like in my company, we give a weight of 60% to your interpersonal skills and 40% to your technical skills, because the company that I work for, we firmly believe that a person can learn anything if they fit into the team. And also go with the mission, vision, value of the company and see how that resonates with you as a person, because you're going to be working in day in and day out. If you feel that, yes, your mission vision fits in with the company's mission and vision, then that's a cakewalk. 20% of the hurdle is passed. Because when you converse with the hiring manager, when you converse with the higher ups, when you converse with anybody in the company, they would see you as a fit. And that's a team fit straight there. And then the rest is going to be your technical skills, where you can still say that I have a PhD, I've done this, but I'm still willing to learn. Given a chance, I would still learn. You would not say it like I don't know, but you would say like, yeah, given a chance, I would learn. Make your answers more positive. Instead of having a negative impact, make your answers more positive. Just spin the wheel around, and that would definitely fetch you success.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for your tips, Janani.
Just to add more to that, Shohag,
Yeah.
don't be in that inferiority complex thing, because that's very easy to go. And I can tell you that I have been there multiple times, and I think the next generation should learn from our experience, because I have done like almost like 6 or 7 years postdoc, and then it took me a while to get over that. But once I'm on the other side of the fence now, I realize that, so now we are hiring and other things, we put everything under the sun there. I mean, we just don't really say that, okay, we want someone with the proteomics skill. No, we put like proteomics, molecular biology, this, that, all those things. I mean, you have to briefly know these things. And I generally said, most of the time it's a fit in a cultural fit and other things. But don't get like, of course you'd look at the JD, but if they are like, if at least 60 or 70% of it, And if you don't know 30-40%, you don't have to worry, because those things you can learn, those things you can get onto. And then, I mean, once you join the new lab, I mean, you came here from India and did your PhD. That's really that's really an achievement in itself, that you have crossed that whole hurdle. Okay, so going to new lab and learn something new for first 15 days is a literally very easy thing to do. So it is very easy to say, okay, this is get into inferiority complex, but I would say don't go there. You know your worth, you know how good you are, just be confident in what you're doing, and then should just go to next level. Because most of the time we know our worth, but then the confidence, we lack confidence, that because in academia we always try to undersell ourselves. We always say that if experiment works something, we won't really say that, oh, this is like this and that, but then you always say, okay, the experiment worked, but I made to try one more time to make it sure that it worked and all those things. It has been the academia is more of a downplay in most of the time. Industry is okay, once you try, second time you try, if it doesn't work third time, you're going to scrap that and start new. It is not okay, the antibody didn't work and you're change the methanol concentration, you check the formaldehyde concentration, check the
It
antibody
doesn't work in
concentration.
my hands.
Yeah, so it is there are so multiple things. So don't worry of anything of that sort. If you know your worth, and if you just be confident and go for it, what will happen? The worst thing can happen, they will say no. That's the only thing will happen, and that's fine. At least you will learn one more, what can you change in your next time to answer that particular question. You learn that, but if you don't try, you will not learn. That's it.
I think very good points. And
Thank you, Abhijit.
Touching on what everybody said about cultural fit. I remember when I joined Gurukool, there was a industry panel that had happened, and Deepa was there. And one of the participants had asked, what matters more, your publications or your skills? And Deepa's reply to was that, who will get selected between, if you have an applicant with more publications and an applicant with more skills? And Deepa's response was whoever does the best at lunch. So whoever is the best with you in your to see whether you can work in a team, that's the person who gets selected, irrespective of who has more publication. And I thought that was a wonderful thing to say. It's much beyond that. Okay, one final question, if anybody has any. One last question. Okay, if not, thank you so
I want to ask
okay,
one
yes.
thing. Sorry. So sometimes we give an interview and then we don't get any reply from them. So is it good to ask them about, whether they are considering me or not? And if we do that, how long will we take to do that? 2 days, 3 days, 7 days, 10 days? What do you suggest?
So I usually wait for a week. And if I don't hear back, I send them a very polite email saying that, I was eagerly looking for your email last week. And I think that even if you've decided to go with another candidate, that's still fine. But if you could give me a feedback, that would be very helpful for my next interview. It's more positively asking them, are you going to go with me or are you going to go with somebody else? I usually send an email. I wait for 10 days and then I send an email. I usually send a thank you email within 24 hours post my interview. And sometimes you do get a response for that. If you don't get a response, you wait for 10 days because you are the best judge. You know how the interview went. If it went really well, and that's what you feel it went really well, send an email, a follow-up email in 10 days. And they usually respond. If they don't respond, I would just move on with the next one. But usually I wait for 10 days. I'm curious to know what Abhijit and Tisha's thinks, but
yeah, so for me, actually, I always ask them in the beginning that, okay, what is the timeline that we are looking now? Because they would say, okay, we have still 4 more candidates in the pipeline and all those things. So I would just ask them, what is the timeline that we are looking, when I should expect to hear next step? If they say a week or 2 weeks, then I would give that much time, and then I would ask, because then you can say that, as she said, as Janani said, you first send a thank you mail for, of course, after you're done, but then you wait for that much amount of time, but make sure that you ask that question before you close your conversation, that what is the timeline? Because then that way, at least and then they will ask you why you're asking all these things, but then you can say that because I have interviews or whatever you have in your mind. But if not also, it's always good to get the timeline from them. So then once you know that, okay, then you can just ask them that, okay, now it's like 2 weeks and other things, so what is like the next step? And then you can add other points that Janani also said, that if you have gone ahead with the next other candidates, it's fine, but just let us know and give the feedback and other things. But it's always good to, I generally ask in the beginning that what is the timeline, and that helped me a lot.
Yeah, so same for me. I try to follow up with a thank you email, and then I wait for 2 weeks and I request for a feedback. And again, I would say please don't take it to your heart when if you don't hear back, because there is actually a very nice post in Gurukool where a person who was a hiring manager in a small startup, they share their perspective that sometimes people are so overwhelmed that they do not have actually time to get back. So if it does not work out, it doesn't work out, but it doesn't mean it shouldn't have any effect on your psyche, because that's gonna affect your next job interview or whatever. So do it and then forget about it. uh, I wait for 2 weeks and then I request for a feedback, and I try to send the mail to the hiring manager as well as the HR. Either one of them gets back to me, it's fine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I have a quick question. Sorry, that was got the last one, but
Go ahead, Iru.
okay. So I had an interview with startup and it went really well. And they asked me for the references and everything, which I assume they only ask when it's like they are offering the role. And then they ghosted me like for like 2-3 weeks. And then I asked like this, it was the interview with the CEO himself because it was a startup. And then he was like, I asked him like if he could like provide me with the update, and he was like, yeah, we got your references, they were really good, but we decided to move with the other candidates. So do industry like ask for references all the time? Because it's kind of difficult to ask the reference and then not get the job for and then do it again. Is that a norm or?
I think it
Usually when they
depending.
ask for
Sorry.
references, you have made the final cut, like you are very close. That is what I hear from multiple people. When they are asking for references, you have come very, very close. So yeah.
But I think it
So
depends on the hiring manager as well, because I have this one experience where hiring manager, I just spoke to him. He didn't really go through the whole process. And in the first interview, like after that only he asked me for like, my references. And I was like, so does that mean that you're going to offer me? Or does that mean that what exactly? And then he went back and forth and then I actually got the technical interview and spoke to everyone. And then he made me wait for like 2 weeks and then like, no. So all these things happens at like totally different level. It's always depending on the hiring manager, that when he has
so
to
my
like push your case, if at all he is very happy about like hiring you, it's all like he wants to push his case, your case to the other people. Like maybe it's an administrative thing that he just wanted to like make your case stronger, so he want to get your references. So it is, you cannot really say one thing, but I had like different experiences. One of the experience was he asked me in the beginning, but as Titash said, that I know it's always towards the end that you generally they ask you for the references. That's 80% of the time, but you can have 20% of the time where it just a random thing just happens, and then they just wanted to make some decision, and then something just else pops up, and then just like, okay.
Sometimes it's also about asking your references, and also like, they already have another candidate in mind, but they take your reference just to prove the point that they want to take the other candidate and not you. Things happen in industry, 80% of the time, to be honest. Like, they're going to finalize on this particular candidate, but then another candidate who's a friend of CEO comes into play, and then you're like, okay, I can't take this candidate, but I have to go with the other one.
okay.
Sometimes the hiring managers do fight, but for startups, I don't think a hiring manager has much voice to talk to.
They don't have like hiring
So
manager as such. But my question is like every time, because every time they ask for the reference, I mean, I cannot ask my referees to write reference all the time, right? So is there like a certain cut of like, okay, this candidate has reached up to this level, so we ask the, because usually I have heard that they will usually ask the references when they are offering you, and they want just that to be like documented along with all the protocols.
Yes and no. So usually the companies reach out to your references, and they sometimes, so the company that I work for, they generally look for letters from the reference based on the position that they're hiring. And they try to see if the references talk the same thing that you as a candidate spoke to them about. If that's a mismatch, then it can go haywire. Most of the times it's usually the companies reach out and ask for specific things, as per my understanding, but I don't know how it works with a startup. Maybe Abhijit can pitch in.
Yeah, I think it's the same. I mean, it all depends on the uh,
Situation.
in a way that so as I said, like it can just go like in any ways after that. Like, so what generally I do is that I ask them specifically that before actually going to, like, what is the situation, what is the thing that they are. It is always easy that to get, like, uh, into that where you don't really ask many questions and then you bog down, because like let them do whatever they want to do. But if you want to take things in your control, not in like actually control, but at least from your side, because as you said, you can't really keep asking your references to do that, because it's not like they would say, okay, it's you're bothering them as well at the same time. It's not good because you're giving like 10 interviews and they are writing 10 letters and then you are not going anywhere. So it is not really a good idea from your perspective as well to ask them whether the letters all the time or the interviews all the time from them. So I would definitely make sure that, okay, when they say that references, what does that mean? So that and you can tell them that, because the
So it's
references are
it's
like,
it's okay to ask them, like,
oh yeah,
if they are asking for references.
It's always good to be like transparent and frank about these things, because you can tell them that, that my references are pretty busy and they just cannot really like keep doing these things. So if just let me know exactly what stage I am, and then I can just provide you references, because otherwise it's going to be like tough deal for them as well. So it is
Okay,
always
thanks.
easy to like, it's always good to ask. There is no harm in asking. What the most they will say, that
I know.
they will say no or something, but at least you have clear, and then you can convey that to your references that, okay, you did 100% to justify that why they need the references, and that's it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
And mostly in my case, at least most of Bay Area companies, they always talk on a phone, so it happens in like 15-20 minutes and that's it, it's done.
Yeah, so
So
I gave them my reference. It was my PhD mentor and postdoc mentor, and I know they like, I have like really nice mentors. So, but they were like, no, we need a letter, and I was like, I gave them their phone number, but they were like, yeah, we'll contact them if we have to, but right now we need the letters.
okay, then that's very specific. Then I don't, because in our case also, like in most of the companies that I applied to, nobody asked for later. Everyone asked for like the phone
Yeah,
conversation.
phone call, it's okay, but yeah. Anyway, thank you very much.
I agree.
Okay. Thank you. On that note, we will wrap up today's session. But a huge, huge, huge thank you to Janani, Titash, and Abhijit. This went on much beyond 1 hour, but thank you for sharing your insights, for all your tips. This was an absolute wonderful panel discussion, and I'm pretty sure everybody who attended will greatly benefit from everything, all the suggestions you all had. The recording will obviously be shared with this current session, and I'll share it with you all as well, with the panelists as well. But once again, thank you so much for taking this time out to do on your weekend and answering all these questions. Thank you.
Thank
you.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thank
inviting
you.
us.
Thank
Yeah.
you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Hope to
Thank
see
you,
you
everyone.
soon.
See you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
All right. I can actually